Welcome, everybody, to another installment of YouTube Live here on David Green Real Estate. We are excited to jump into tonight's topic. We're going to be talking a little bit about, you got it, the debt ceiling. There's going to be a lot going into that and what that effect has on you as real estate investors, people who are looking to build wealth. Great to see everyone. David and I are we're wearing the same shirt tonight, so we look really good. Do us a favor. The comments are kind of quiet right now. I know we got about 36 people, and we got some people coming in to hang out with us. Let us know where you're from, what you're doing. Let's see who is here. We'll do a little check-in. Matthew Featherston, that's a cool last name, from Richmond, Virginia. Welcome. Looking good. We got Tanya, our Spartan Leaguer from Northwest Michigan. Great to see you. Who else do we have? Ni hao, Javier, another Spartan in the house. Lisa, what's going on? Another Spartan Leaguer from Southern California. Great to see you, as always. Let's see. We got Kim Dice from Kentucky. What's going on? Hopefully it's warming up out there this time of year. Kevin from Lakeland, Florida. You should reach out to us, Kevin. See if, I don't know how far that is from Fort Lauderdale, but David and I will be there at the end of July. We'd love to see you there. Who else we got here? Romeo Perles from, doesn't say, but hello to you as well. Zebra Journey, that's a cool name too. Here from Southwest Florida. Come see us in Fort Lauderdale. Dora Emig, hello from Napa. Great to see you, Dora. You're always here. Let's see what David has to say. He says, time for my PM meditation. I look forward to taking you guys and the retreat participants on the replay. Oh, no worries, man. We're actually going to have some more of our retreat members starting next week. So you're not missing much today. So no worries. Enjoy your meditation, my man, and have lots of fun with it. Who else we got here? Poco pero locos. I have to ask David what that means. Let's see. Reading, Pennsylvania in the house. Very cool. Mark, upstate New York. Jaron, Chattanooga. Rick, Tucson, Arizona. Oh, Roy's here for the Jiu-jitsu talk. We might have a talk about that. You never know when that could come up.
We were talking about that on Instagram before I came
over.
Someone said, are you still doing it? And I had a horrible night last night. I actually was going to talk to you about it, but we ended up talking about other stuff. It was my ego's been beat up all day.
Was it pretty bad?
It was just a very hard day. Like I went running earlier in the day in the sun, right? And then I got there, and it was a day where we were drilling just a little more. Like sometimes the drills are not that bad. Mm-hmm. This was like practicing takedowns. So when you're a big guy, I'll just say it again, stuff that seems easy for someone who's not big becomes hard for someone that is. Like it's a good life lesson to remember that when you're extroverted, it's hard to remember that introverts can be exhausted by things. When you're introspective and analytical, it's hard to remember that some people are exhausted by analysis. You know, like What's easy to us is not for other people. So we were doing these drills where we were practicing ducking under punches, right? Well, like 3 minutes of just constantly like ducking down and moving and ducking down and moving is like, it feels like you're doing squats for 3 minutes, which, as you know, Kyle, I don't work legs out nearly as much as I should.
Yep.
And then you're practicing punching the guy and moving with him. So you're still like, it's kind of like basketball where like you're ducking down, you're coming up, right? Like you have to spring around. A couple rounds of that is like just tiring, right? And then we practice taking each other down. So just standing up off the mat, you do that once or 2 or 3 times is not that bad. When you're doing that like over and over and over, you're like, dude, just getting myself up and down. It's like sweat's pouring off of us, right? And then we look over and these 2 like girls in the class in the other corner, and they're like smiling. There's not a drop of sweat on them. They weigh like 95 pounds, 112 pounds, and like that is not a hard thing for them to do, right? But some of the other stuff is hard when they have to like squeeze somebody or something. That becomes tricky. So I was just tired, and then there was only 3 guys that could roll. So if I didn't do it, one of them was going to have to roll with an instructor, which is like, dude, that sucks. It's very
They'll
hard.
take you down, right?
You start down, but they'll just like, they're going to tap you, that of course, but they'll make you work really hard before they do. So you're just exhausted because they're like dancing circles around you, right? So I went to go roll after I was already tired. And I had told myself, and I actually talked to someone else about it, I think I'm just going to let my partner take the better position and just practice escaping. Okay. So I've just been
Ooh.
laying down on my back, and he didn't even know that I was like, he just thought, oh, I'm so good. Literally, I just lay down and then he'd take side controller mount, and then I practice getting out of it, which has been wise the last couple of times I rolled, because now we don't like clash. You don't have injuries and stuff. I just completely underestimated how tired I already was and how exhausting it is to be escaping all the time. So I'd get out, then let him do it again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't breathe, man. He's getting on my chest and like I can't get air in at all. Super tired, just couldn't get my breath down at all. And I'm like, I just was like, why is this so hard? Well, it's because you burn so much energy escaping. I usually end up on the top, where I'm a big guy, so it's tiring, but it's not as tiring as when the person's on top of you, right? So I got done, and the instructor was like, rough day today, huh? And then that was worse for my ego, because he didn't even realize I was letting the guy do that. I'm like, do they think I'm that bad? He can't tell that I'm just laying here and letting this guy get on top.
They're coming over, patting you on the back, making you try to feel better about yourself. You poor guy.
He's like, oh man, you were struggling today. I was like, well, yeah, I was doing this thing. And he goes, oh yeah, don't do that. You guys are the same skill level. You shouldn't be trying to escape from that type of thing.
You got a little slap on the wrist from the instructor then too, it sounds like.
Yes, that didn't help. And then my knee got tweaked when I don't remember how it got tweaked, but it was just like hurting all night. And then I had a couple mat burns, which happened too, because when you're like frenetic like that, you're just not used to moving around on a mat. It's easy to drag your foot instead of picking up and putting it down, you know?
I think I had a friend in high school named Matt Burns. That's funny.
That's funny. You heard his name right there. So then all last night I was trying to sleep and I kept waking up because like the mat burn was like hurting when I would move under the covers. So we were talking about that on Instagram. It was a hard day yesterday.
Tell us, what's the difference between a mat burn and a floor burn in basketball? Is one worse than the other, or are they about the same?
Well, with basketball, you get a floor burn when you aren't sweaty and you dive on a loose ball, right? Those were bigger surface areas, but I don't remember them being as deep of a burn. Mat burns are smaller areas, but they go way deeper. Like I could send you a picture, your jaw would probably drop. Of like, I've had permanent scars from just dragging my feet across the mat in the middle of it and not realizing it, you know?
Ooh,
so
yeah.
And you don't have to worry about floor burns in basketball once you get to work a sweat up, right? But with like mat burns, it's just my instructor said, yeah, when you're not used to it, you just don't know how to move your feet yet. It becomes like second nature that doesn't happen once you figure it out a couple times.
So you learn how to avoid them eventually.
Yes, 100%. That's like, they call them white belt feet, like because we're walking around with like band-aids and stuff on our feet all the time. Kind of like before you learn how to protect blisters.
Exactly. That reminds me when I rode my bike across Iowa, and there was all these cyclists out there, and they would say they know the rookies because they're the people that would have like the chain grease on their legs because they don't know how to get on and off their bike so many times. So it's very easy to know based on the people who have black legs.
Like that's just a thing to pay attention to. We could probably make a bigger lesson. When you start anything new, it will be very hard, and you'll think it's always going to be that way, but it's not. Like if you and I just went horseback riding, our thighs and our groin muscles would be so exhausted and burning from holding onto the horse, right? Because you don't know when to squeeze them and when not to. You just keep them squeezed the whole time. And they're not conditioned to doing that. You know, like it would be horrible. Riding a bike would be terrible. Every time you start something new, there's this really, really difficult process. And I think investing in real estate is the same way. You don't recognize what's going to burn you. And then when it happens, you're like, I suck at this. I never should have done it. I made all these mistakes. I bought a turnkey house in the Midwest and I paid too much. And I suck at real estate. Like, no, that's just mat burns. That's bike grease. Yeah. Well, that's sore legs from riding a horse. You should expect that, which is why we typically tell new investors to house hack, get their feet underneath them, sort of learn the process slowly rather than going out there and signing to ride across the entire state of Iowa for the very first time they ride a bike. Didn't you do that, Kyle?
Oh, there you go, Angela. Yeah, she just met a guy yesterday who's going to ride his bike across Iowa. Isn't it just cornfields? No, they have a lot of soy fields as well, soybean fields. And it's honestly a lot of beer, a lot of IPAs, a lot of like festival food. But it's also a lot of fun. And I did it with my dad. My dad lives in Iowa. And it was like a 6 or 7 day endeavor. And they have lots of hills. They have lots of humidity, lots of lots of like thunderstorms in the summer. So it's actually a pretty cool experience. Would recommend it to anybody that's into that kind of thing. I've only done it once, but it was a blast. Absolutely. And I'm not a huge like cyclist dude, but it was a lot of fun.
Every time I hear Ragbri, I always think like Ragnarok from Thor, and I just
Yeah.
picture you being Thor. What do you guys think about Kyle's hair? I like it. I've been encouraging him to keep growing it. I want to know what you guys think too. And because Jaron Kyle said, how about some real estate talk? I'm now going to extend this to not include real estate for even longer, just because we're going to end up talking about real estate for an hour and a half. So if we have small talk in the beginning and we get to connect to people, it's not the end of the world.
I do like how he said how many times we hear David say Matt Burns, because that is kind of funny. Once you hear the name Matt Burns and then you say Matt Burns, all you think about is the name. That could be like a chapter in a book. We can talk about how Matt Burns are something that is necessary for any rookie, and how Matt Burns as a freshman in high school was kind of an awkward dude, and maybe there's some kind of connection there we could create. I don't know.
You didn't have to say he was awkward. I assume he was a cool guy if I was saying a name like his. Well, and the people have spoken. They all like your hair.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah. You got to keep growing it, man. Like little Johnny Bravo.
Yes, the people have spoken. I wanted to just show something really quick. I want to highlight one thing. Where is my boy Zach? Here we go. Zach is from Missouri, and he actually booked the retreat today.
There we go.
Dude, that's awesome. Congrats.
All right, Matt. Zachary. If you guys go to the retreat and you want, I will show you pictures of my Matt Burns. You will get to see third-degree burns, like literally rip through all the skin, looking at pure muscle of my feet. And then I'll even maybe show you like what the scars look like if you guys want to see. If that's not a incentive to go sign up for the retreat and get your life changed, I don't know what is. Oh, Angela said less controversy than David's beard about your hair. Yeah, bro, you have like a 90% approval rating with that thing. No one here has said it's bad. My beard, though, that was a little politically charged.
Yeah, there's a lot of people coming after you for that, man. Jimmy says he wants to see it grow into a mullet. My thing is, how do you know it's not a mullet yet? You haven't seen the back, Jimmy. It could be a mullet right now for all you know. By the way, we're talking about real estate tonight. We're also talking about the debt ceiling, which is why I have this music going, because honestly, like when I hear the word debt ceiling, I feel like I'm Michael Scott. Like I'm just a kid in the candy shop who doesn't want to have to eat his broccoli, doesn't want to have to talk about anything fun. I only want the sweets, right? So we're trying to spice it up tonight, because anytime you have a talk about the debt ceiling, it can get very, very blah and boring. But we also want to have fun when we're talking about this kind of stuff too, and enjoy it. So Romeo asked a question: will this be posted later for those that can't listen to the full live chat? Yes, this is always we're here just about every Friday night at 5 p.m. So welcome to those of you who maybe are new to the channel, new to these YouTube lives. My name is Kyle Ranke. I'm the COO of Spartan League, David Green team. I'm a real estate agent, also David Green's best friend, and we come here every Friday night at 5 p.m. Pacific to talk about real estate, to talk about wealth building, to talk about really some of the most important topics that are happening right now, so that you can make the best decisions when it comes to real estate investing, when it comes to building wealth, when it comes to just being an all-around better person. The way this works is a lot of times we bring in guests to talk. We bring in former clients of ours that we've worked with. We even review videos and talk a little bit about those topics, and we will bring on people live to this show. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to start a little banner at the bottom. And if you want to come in tonight and talk with David and myself about the debt ceiling, about your thoughts and your opinion on the real estate market and how it's going to be affected potentially by the debt ceiling, we would love to have you here. You just send a text to the number 833-777-0309. One other thing, while you're here, do us a quick favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified when we're doing these lives every week. You'll get a nice little reminder to come in. What do you think about all that, David?
It's a great point. We are doing these because we want to strengthen the community. So one of my goals for 2023 was not just to have people that follow me, have you in a database. It's to make a bigger effort connecting with you. And of course we do things that make money, right? We do loans, we sell real estate, we have Spartan League. It's it's ridiculously cheaper than everything else that's out there. I'm trying to give you guys options of learning real estate from someone that will tell you it from the horse's mouth, as opposed to take my $20,000 course and I will teach you a method that you don't realize didn't work until after you did it. That's really the gist of this. So we're here because we want to get to know you guys better. It's why we do in-person retreats. We don't let them be virtual. We actually want to get to know you guys. So we need to know in the comment section here what questions you have, what you want to talk about, like what would help you with this information, because it's important from my perspective that you all understand why prices go up or why they go down, as opposed to just, are they going up or are they going down? Everyone asked the wrong question. You're not going to predict that unless you know what makes them go up or go down. This is clearly a tough time to buy real estate. Do you know why? If you understand why, you'll probably be the first person to recognize when it's going to turn around, when it's going to change, if it's going to get worse. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
I love it. And out of curiosity, what do you guys think about the debt ceiling in general? Type it in the chat. If you don't know anything about it, say, I don't know. I don't know what it means. I haven't been following it. I don't understand it. I just skip it when I see it on the news. Or you've got a certain opinion about the debt ceiling. Maybe you have a certain opinion about how the debt ceiling is going to affect the real estate market, either for the short term or the long term. Type it in the chat. I'm just curious what you guys are thinking and what your thoughts are. David, before we jump into the first video, I'm curious, do you have any, just right off the cuff, any specific thoughts about the debt ceiling? I'm seeing a few things come in already. People are saying, hey, it's just for show these days. It's totally arbitrary. It's the most irrelevant. What are your thoughts?
I will admit I'm probably less opinionated about the debt ceiling than I am about things like quantitative easing. So if you compare them to each other, I don't think the debt ceiling affects our economy as much as quantitative easing, which I've been, the entire time that's going on, I've been saying it's going to make inflation. It's going to make inflation. I've been screaming about that, and it did make inflation. And it's made inflation so bad that cost of living is higher, purchasing power is lower, and real estate is more expensive. It's the worst thing ever for investors. Why is that important? Because at the time I was saying it, people thought prices were already too high and they had to come down. 3 years later, they have not come down. They've actually gone up quite a bit. So if you listened to me back then and you bought, you're really happy now. You're buying in 2019, 2018, even 2020, right? Like you got a way better rate. And even if prices have gone up only a little bit, the cost of the capital that you borrowed was very significant. It was the why. I was explaining the why. I don't know exactly how the debt ceiling will affect finances as much, which we're going to be getting into today, but it cannot be good. Okay. We're going to learn about the debt ceiling, but here is the gist of it. Let's say the government is your household, Kyle. Okay. And you are spending more money every month than what you make. All right. Could you continue to spend more every month than what you make?
Not forever, not indefinitely.
Okay. What happens that would stop you from being able to continue paying your bills?
If I stop getting the ability to borrow or pay back.
There you go. So the first barrier would be I would run out of savings.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next barrier would be, well, I got to borrow money because I'm spending more than what I'm making. So there's credit that gets involved. But at a certain point, Discovery, MasterCard, Visas, like you can't borrow anymore. When you hit that ceiling that they've put on you to borrow, you would then default on all of the debt you had already taken and the payments you were supposed to make. You're with me so far?
Yep.
Why would Visa put a limit on how much they'd let you borrow?
Because they know that the bigger limit they give me, the lower likelihood I'd be able to pay it back, and the higher likelihood I'd probably default.
That's it. They know, like, the more we let you borrow relative to your income, the less likely you are to buy it back. So their risk exponentially grows. Okay. If no one stopped you, would you stop yourself? Would you be like, you know what? I'm $100,000 in debt. I can't pay my bills. I'm used to this quality of life. I'm just going to do the right thing and get responsible. And I'm going to start eating canned beans and working triple overtime. And I'm going to get myself out of this problem.
No, I think we would all continue to borrow until the day we die.
How it usually works, right? Until something drastic happens, you don't change your ways. Well, we run at a deficit in our country. We spend more money than what we bring in taxes. Okay. The thing that makes the country different than you, Kyle, is you have a ceiling on how much you can borrow. The country can create more money to pay their debt. You can't do that. Okay. Imagine if they were like, well, we're going to let you pay your bills in money that you print on your own. And your son goes and he says, all right, I've created a computer program that makes something that looks like dollars. We'll pay them with that. Well, nothing would ever stop you.
Nope.
Right. Our problem is that we don't cut back on spending. We don't cut back on our debt. We don't pay it down. And if we try to, we will vote a politician in who says you don't have to. No one wants to be the bad guy who comes in and says, we're going to have to pay this debt down. So we have to create more money to pay that off, or we have to approve how much we are allowed to borrow in order to pay our debt we already have, which we typically do by selling bonds, selling government like assets that we go and we say, okay, Kyle, if you give us this much money, we'll give you your money back plus 4% in this period of time. That's how they raise their money, right? Just like if you, hey, Visa, if you let me borrow this money, I'll give you this much back plus 18% over time. That's the idea. Well, the ceiling was supposed to be a limit of how much the country could borrow, and we blow right past it every time. It's either we increase our credit limit, which is what we call the debt ceiling, or we default. What do you think happens if, as we continue to borrow more money and create more money in a combination of the two? Do you think money becomes worth less, or do you think it becomes worth more as we make more of it?
It becomes worth less.
That's right. And as you know from doing these, what happens to the price of things as money becomes worth less? Does it take more dollars to buy something worth less, or less dollars to buy something?
Oh man, inflation, the price of everything goes up and it takes more money to buy that stuff.
So the debt ceiling is very relevant to real estate investors because as we're devaluing how much money is worth, we would expect the price of things to go up, which means real estate, which does very well in inflationary environments, is likely to continue to do well, even if it's not doing well right now. If the country come out and said, as you're going to see in these videos, we refuse to raise a debt ceiling, we're just going to default on our debt, we'd be having a different conversation about how that would affect the economy, how that would affect real estate prices, how that would affect borrowing. So this is a form of, sorry, I shouldn't say that. This is a contributing factor to inflation, just like quantitative easing was, just like everything that you guys keep hearing me rant about over and over and over, because in my opinion, this is one of the reasons real estate's becoming expensive, even though interest rates are going up. How was that?
That's a great start. And that is a great definition of the debt ceiling and how it might affect the economy, specifically how it affects the almighty dollar, right? Because we need that in order to invest in real estate and to build wealth. So this first video I've got queued up here, we're going to talk. This is just a Washington Post video, nothing special about it. It's a quick one. It's a 2-minute hitter. It's really just to kind of give 3 takeaways that came from the recent debt ceiling negotiations. So this is just to kind of lay a foundation. It doesn't get specific yet into real estate, but we've got some things going in. By the way, keep those comments coming in. I'm seeing a lot of really good points being made. So let's get this started.
100% what everybody wants. But when you look, the country is going to be stronger.
No one got everything they want, but that's the responsibility of governing.
After weeks of negotiations, the House has passed the debt ceiling deal forged by House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and President Biden. Here's what just happened and what we learned from it. The deal was put together in the last few weeks after the White House backed off its initial posture, which was that there would be no negotiating and that the only bill that it would accept was a clean debt ceiling bill. In the end, what we got were modest spending cuts, a spending freeze really, and some smaller items on permitting reform, as well as food stamps and other measures that Republicans had sought as part of the deal. President Biden, in agreeing to deal with Republicans, was willing to give somewhat on his priorities. At the same time, it was clear that President Biden was worried about a potential default, what kind of impact that could have on both the country and his looming re-election bid in 2024. And he's always come at these debates from the position of a deal maker.
This is a step in the right direction that no one thought we would be at today.
Perhaps the one figure who was in the toughest spot when this whole process started was House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. He was able to deal with his right flank and also get something done that had to pass, or there would be catastrophic consequences for the economy. And he was able to do it in a very narrowly divided House in a way that we didn't necessarily know was going to be possible even 4 or 5 months ago. And in the process, he seems to have done himself well when it comes to holding on to the speakership. One of the other things that we learned is that we are going to probably see more things like this in the future. The downside for Democrats in negotiating over the debt ceiling was that it sets a precedent, or rather expands upon the precedent of using this to secure concessions from the other side.
I think it would cause more controversy getting rid of the debt limit, although I am exploring the idea that we would, at a later date, a year or two from now, decide whether or not the 14th Amendment, how that actually would impact on whether or not you need to do the debt limit every year. But that's another day.
It's not 100%.
All right, so that's kind of an initial teaser at what we're going to be talking about. But really quick, David, for those that maybe don't understand when it comes to negotiating the debt ceiling, what are some of like the typical reasons or negotiations that happen, right? What parties are trying to push certain things through? Why is that important just to be considered from an all over general perspective?
Yeah, I'll give you a general perspective. That's exactly right, because you'll have parties from either side that can side against their typical party lines. But generally speaking, the Democratic Party wants to increase the debt ceiling, and they make the argument that we need the money because people need it. In general, right? That's what that party has sort of used as their value to society is we are going to give you things that you can't afford or can't have. So education, healthcare, housing expenses in general. Of course, it's not always the same for everybody, but that's part of the value that they bring to the voter is if you vote for us, we will make sure you're taken care of. And if you don't vote for us, maybe nobody's going to. So they always have to increase the debt ceiling if they want to be able to continue to provide those programs that spread money out, right? The Republican Party in general says we don't want as big of a government. We want to have less intrusiveness. We want less programs out there for people. We want people to kind of do this on their own. We want taxes to be lower because every time you raise taxes, that creates the ability to have more programs, but it also takes away the freedom of the people that made the money, right? So in general, you find that people that make a lot of money don't like taxes. People that don't make a lot of money do like taxes because taxes are a way of moving money from one person to another. You've heard me make the example before, Kyle, that we tend to treat money very differently than we treat anything else. And that's because it's easy to move it from one person to another, right? If you're working out every day, riding your bike and you're burning off fat and you're getting fit and I'm eating donuts and cupcakes and I never go to the gym, and I make the argument it's not fair that you have such a great body and I have to struggle with the bad body for whatever reason that I make of why that it would be the case. Okay. Even if some of it's real, maybe I grew up in a household with worse eating habits than you. Maybe my parents didn't teach me about nutrition and yours did, right? Like it's a legit argument that it could be unfair. But if I use that to say, now you have to take my fat from your body, we're going to liposuction it off of me and stick it onto you, right? I like that as the fat guy. You don't like that as the fit guy. That's how taxes generally work. If you are wealthy, you don't like them. If you make decent money and you work a lot, you don't like them. If you don't value money or you don't have very much of it, you do like them. But you don't realize you like taxes. What you think you like is programs. They don't, people that they don't understand taxes create the programs. And I don't even know if I blame people for not understanding that, because if they're not interested in money and they're not making a lot of it, why would they make the connection? Like if you're not interested in fitness, you don't understand caloric deficits and free radicals and working out. And I wouldn't expect you to. Why would you care about that? If you don't value fitness, why would you understand the connection between the work that you, Kyle, are doing in the gym versus me? This is why I don't get angry about these things. I just see them objectively like what they are. So there's usually the Republican Party that's saying we cannot continue to increase the debt ceiling. It's going to do damage. They say we're kicking the can down the road. What that means is we are pushing off the consequences of our decisions. Okay. So me as the fat guy, I now have health conditions. I have high blood pressure. I can't get out of bed. If you've seen the movie The Whale, I'm that guy, right? Like I could barely get around. I have to have somebody else bring me my chicken because I can't get up to go grab the bucket of fried chicken to eat it, right? And they keep telling me, you need to go to the doctor. You need to change your eating habits. You need to do something different. And I keep saying, like, I'll just deal with it later. I'll just deal with it later. That's kicking the can down the road. Okay. So the fit people are like, they care about this stuff. They want you to focus on your health. They want you to get healthier. They want you to change your habits. The unfit people financially are not wanting to do that. And it typically comes down to a vote. Now, here's the problem that we have. If the Republican Party doesn't agree to raise the debt, or if either party doesn't agree to raise the debt, it's not just that we can't borrow more money, and so we're not able to have. It's not like, oh, we got to close down housing programs, we got to close down medical facilities or free healthcare, free education. It's more than that. We would not be able to pay back the countries that we've already borrowed the money from. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if Visa says, Kyle, you can't borrow any more money. You cannot pay back Discover Card. You can't pay back MasterCard. You can't pay back the HELOC you took the loan on. You can't pay back your friend that you borrowed money from. You start to default on all of your debt. And now no one will ever let you borrow money for a very long time. So now you might get in trouble because you want to use your credit card to buy gas because you don't have cash with you. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
You see how that could like even be a safety issue at times where, like, if you don't have cash on you and you need to buy something and you don't have any ability to use credit at all, that could be a disaster. So we don't want to default on our debt to other countries. Now, do you mind if I go a little bit deeper?
Always.
Okay, this is and I say all the time, you got to ask the right questions. A lot of people come to watch YouTubes like this or gain real estate knowledge, and their question is, just give me the information that I can use to buy the house right now. Where's the best place to buy it? Where do I go to get a house? What am I supposed to do? Make it easy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Life does not work that way. The sellers of those homes don't care what your goals are. The tenants that are going to pay rent don't care what you're spending on the house. No one cares what you want. So you got to care about what's going on in everybody else's world. If you want to go deep into why we have to keep raising the debt ceiling and why my opinion is we're probably never going to stop raising it, even though we should, we won't. It's because if you look at the debtors that we have right now, the countries we owe money to, they have leverage over us.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you think we make in America compared to how much we import from other countries?
Far less.
Way less. Okay.
Yeah.
If you just look at the way that our trade works, we bring in items of value, clothing, underwear, socks, medicine, cars, furniture, like pretty much everything we go buy at a store came from another country if it was manufactured. All right. It's way cheaper that way. So they give us something of inherent value, like a good, and we give them $1. We keep printing more of these dollars. So we keep giving them more of something that is worth less. And they keep giving us things that have inherent value. Do you see how we have sort of lost our position in this? They have more leverage over us. Yeah, the Wealth Building Journey says the U.S. is a net importer since the 80s. We import more than we export, right? There's like the Hondas, the Toyotas, those are coming from other countries. You don't see as many Fords and Chevys being driven in Japan, right? And generally speaking, other countries make stuff cheaper than we do. And sometimes even better because they don't have the labor laws, they don't have the rights, they don't have the entitlement, they don't have the expectation. You know, like you've heard me say before, these Spartan League t-shirts, they're probably like $50 each because they're made in America. Like if we ordered this t-shirt from somewhere else, we might have got it for $12.
Mm-hmm.
It just costs more to make stuff here. If we said, China, we are not paying you back because we didn't raise the debt ceiling, we're defaulting on our debt, China could say, fine, we're not sending you medicine anymore. You know, I don't know enough about the medical industry to know, but imagine if they said no more amoxicillin, no more penicillin. All the people that have that need antibiotics can't get them. Well, first off, that'd be a big problem. Second off, we'd start making amoxicillin here, but it might be like 12 times more expensive than it would be in China. They're going to start saying, we're not going to send you all the things that you need. We are in a position of disadvantage because we've gotten lazy. We don't make things of value. We don't produce. And our country doesn't always hold to valuing production and being valuable. It's more like, what can we take? What do we deserve? Which puts us in a position that all these people we owe money to, we probably can't default. What are we going to do? They may stop sending us. It's terrible, right? Like we have lost control. And so we have to keep printing dollars and giving them away, which is making those dollars become worth less and less. This is bleak. Of course, Amy says that would be great. Antibiotics are way overused. There's that every time I keep triggering the political opinions and everything I'm doing, right? The point here is we are not in a position of strength in America negotiating with a lot of other countries. In some areas we are. When it comes to trade and commerce, we're not, which means I think the debt ceiling is going to continually be raised over and over and over. Now, here's another problem, if I can go even deeper before the next video. When we raise the rate, you know, the Fed keeps raising rates because they want to stop inflation. What that means is that they have to pay people more money in order to buy the bonds that the country issues, which is how we raise the money to pay back our other debts. So if they keep raising rates, they got to pay you more, Kyle, in order to buy their bonds, which makes it more expensive for the government. They don't want that. They want rates low so they could borrow money from you at 2%, 3%, 4%, not 7, 8, 9%. Okay. That's going to make it very hard for rates to keep going up. And if the Fed continues to keep raising rates, which is what they want to do to slow inflation, but that makes the debt we take on even more expensive to pay back. Where's it going to give? It's going to have to give
somewhere.
Printing more dollars.
Yep.
Right. So guys, keep an eye out for the Bigger Pockets podcast. If you're listening to this live, we have an interview that's going to be coming out with the CEO of Walker and Dunlop. And we talk about this very same thing. He mentions that I think when President Bush was in office, or maybe it was Obama, we had about $8 trillion worth of debt. And after Trump and Biden, it's like, I don't want to get the numbers wrong. It was like 32 billion or 32 trillion or 34 trillion. He said that rates became so low that the payment on the 32 trillion was less than the payment on the 8 trillion. Can you believe, like, that's how low we made rates? And this is part of why we did it. So as these rates are going up on the 32 trillion, imagine if you borrowed, you know, Kyle, if you borrowed $500,000 from Visa at a 3% interest rate, what would happen if that rate went to 10%?
I'd be screwed.
Possible that you wouldn't be able to pay it back unless you printed more dollars. Okay. So overall, my opinion is that when we're all saying when are prices going to come down, I don't know. They could come down. They might come down temporarily. We might have something, but over a long period of time, how on earth could they possibly come down with all of the pressures that we're talking about now? And that's why I think this topic is relevant to real estate investors who are long-term buy and hold.
Yeah. And I hear you saying a couple things, like overall, the debt ceiling and how it relates to the economy is complex, right? There's a lot of nuances that are a part of this. Not to mention the political aspects, right? Different parties, different people in different positions are going to have certain reasons, political reasons for wanting to either raise or lower it. Regardless of all of that, right? We're still just all stuck in this repetitive behavior of continuing to borrow, continue to borrow, which ultimately affects inflation. Inflation, as we've seen, has already been affected because of the quantitative easing. But in addition, now we're seeing more ways that those levers are being pulled, which affect it. So the key is, yes, it does affect inflation. And then now we're going to go in and talk a little bit about, yes, how this also affects things like mortgage rates and specifically real estate. So
before we get to that video,
go for it.
There's a comment here where Wealth Building Journey says, real estate problem is a knowledge is the most important. Liposuction the weight off and transferring it to Kyle wouldn't be a huge setback because Kyle has the knowledge of how to get rid of it. That would be true if people only were motivated by knowledge. Kyle does know how to get rid of the weight that we theoretically take off of me, fat guy, and put it onto him, skinny guy. However, Kyle, how often would you keep going to the gym if you knew that as soon as you burned off my fat, I was going to dump more on you?
I would not. I would be like, I would need to make sure that David is now going to implement the exercise procedures to make sure he keeps it off of him so he doesn't keep dumping it on me.
That's a great point. You would be willing to do that maybe once or twice if you thought that I was getting my stuff under control. But if you saw that I'm taking advantage of you, that the more you take on, the more I eat, and then the more I give to you, you hit a point where you say, F it. There is no reason to keep working this hard if I'm going to do this. Now, what if you were forced to go to the gym? The government tried to come in and say, no, you have to. We are making you work, right? Well, you'd show up at the gym, but would you bust your butt?
No, I'd do the very little, the least amount that I could to get by.
That's human nature, and that's why communism and socialism never works for more than a short period of time. It's that simple. This is not a political statement. This is not me getting up here and saying everything is perfect with capitalism. I'm saying it is human nature that we would not perform under any circumstance, but for some reason, when we talk about money, we act like it's different than everything else. Like we're going to just increase taxes on wealthy people to 90% so that we can give it to the people that aren't rich, but we're not going to give it directly to them. We're going to give it to the government, who's going to spend it on things for those people. And that those rich people aren't going to like run away so that that can't happen by moving to another country, or they're not going to lose motivation. They're not going to continue to excel and do their best. If you're a doctor and you get paid the same to be a doctor, no matter what kind of job you do, you stop giving your best effort. You get to the bare minimum mindset. This is how every single human works. If the NBA paid every player the same and made sure every person got equal playing time, you would not see the very best talent giving their very best effort. They would just put it in cruise control and chill. Basketball would not be as exciting. When you remove competition, it does not bring out the best of people. It removes the worst. That is a concern to me, that as we keep doing this, they're going to start raising taxes because we're at a deficit, right? If you're Kyle, you're like, I can't borrow any more money, or I keep raising my debt limit. I have to do something to get some more money to come back. Let me go take it from that guy. Let me go take it from that person. Eventually those people stop returning your calls.
Yep.
They run away from you. They stop becoming productive. And that is the fear of where the country is headed, from the quantitative easing, from the raising the debt ceiling, from the inflation that we're causing, from wanting to solve every problem through the government, that politicians need to create something to give people. It's one of the reasons that we import more than we export. People don't grow up saying, I really want to go work in a factory and I want to make really good clothing for Americans to wear, or I want to create really good shoes. No one, we grow up now thinking, I want to be an influencer. I want to get a lot of follows on social media, right? I want to make short form content using AI so that I can, get someone to pay me $100 to make a video that took me 3 seconds to do. It's not a positive sign for the future.
I was waiting for a dating analogy there too. I feel like that would really fit for this same principle, right? Because what we're talking about, this doesn't work in dating either. It doesn't work in human relationships.
Yeah. Do you want to try to, you've heard me give enough dating analogies. You want to try to use one here?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing, right? Like in a relationship with somebody else, if I'm continually taking all my baggage, my emotional baggage or my past whatever, and dumping it on them and asking them to fix it, at some point, they're going to be like, listen, you got to carry your own baggage. You got to carry your own weight to some degree. You got to deal with your own traumas or wounds or whatever your past was. So I thought you were going to use it right there, David. I was waiting for it.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're in a relationship and you're working on growth, and you're working on being a better person, and you're like, how do I love them more? How do I learn their love language? How do I come home and like make sure that they're happy? How do I just listen and pour into them? And then the other side's like, oh, you're going to do all the work and support the relationship. I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
I can put my effort into something else. You're like, well, I don't want to be in this relationship. And then when one side leaves, there is no relationship. That's how I look at our governments and our country's finances. When the people who are making all the money, when I say all the money, like when the people who are paying the majority of the taxes feel like there's no point to keep trying, they're going to leave the relationship. And then all the people that complain about wealth disparity and how it was unfair, there's nothing now. Okay, you got rid of the disparity. There's not rich people and poor people. There's just only poor people. That's all that's left, which is what we see happening in Venezuela and the USSR. And I mean, you could like interject any basically socialistic or communistic country in the last several decades. It's the same pattern over and over.
Over and over. Okay, so let's move this over into the real estate field. We're going to watch a little video here about how it affects the debt ceiling affects real estate, and why you should potentially be buying more homes or not. So let's look at it.
Of real estate. Today, we're going to be talking about the debt ceiling deal that's happening right now. We're inching closer and closer. I want to talk about the effects that it has had on real estate up to this point for the past couple of weeks. What's going to happen moving forward throughout the rest of the year. So this is going to be a very interesting video. If you're in real estate, if you're thinking about getting into real estate, if you own property, whatever the case may be, this is going to be the video for you. So before we get into that, let's hear from House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and what he said Saturday.
So we worked through the night last night. We're finalizing the language on an agreement with the president that I believe is worthy of the American people. Just to take you back to where we all started, back to February 1st, sat down with the president. I said, let's work together to be able to raise the debt ceiling, but curve the amount of spending, to let America be able to work again, cut red tape, get some work requirements to help people get back into work. I think this agreement frames all that from limit, save, grow. It doesn't get everything everybody wanted, but that's in divided government. That's where we end up. I think it's a very positive bill.
So by the sounds of that, we're getting closer and closer to a deal. It sounds like each party understands we have to make a deal happen. There's members of each party that feels like they gave up too much to make this happen. This is going in front of Congress Wednesday to vote. The votes will last through Friday, most likely. And they definitely have a deadline of Monday, which is June 5th, which is the day that the Treasury says that the U.S. is going to run out of money if we default on our debt for the first time in history, which is not going to happen. So I'm going to keep an eye on this and let you know as things develop throughout the deal. And I don't want to get into the details of the deal itself right here in this video. I want to talk about the effects that this is having on real estate. It's affected real estate for the past 30 days or so. It's going to affect real estate when this deal is cemented. And it's also going to affect real estate moving forward throughout the rest of the year. So let's dive into all this. Let's start with 30-year fixed mortgages, because 30-year fixed mortgages really affect the ebbs and flows of the market. Even though we have about 28% cash buyers out there, transactions, and so on and so forth, it's the mortgages that really drives the entire market. It's really going to be a good indicator of when we're going to see less transactions, more transactions, prices, etc. So it's really one of the best metrics to really watch. And then we have to watch the metrics that move the needle for the 30-year fixed mortgage. And the best indicator of the 30-year fixed mortgage is going to be 10-year treasuries, which is really highly correlated to inflation. So you got inflation, 10-year treasuries, and 30-year fixed that are all very closely correlated. So let's take a look at 10-year treasuries. If we look at a chart here, we'll see that May 10th was the low. And ever since May 10th, for the last, let's say, 20 days, it's been inching up. Why has it been inching up for the last 20 days or so? Well, the closer and closer that we get to this debt ceiling default, and the uncertainty and the fact that we haven't reached a deal yet, the 10-year treasury has been rising. Until we reach a deal, the 10-year treasury is just going to continue to rise. That's all it's going to do. And so right now, 30-year fixed mortgages are at 7.14% as of the day that I'm filming this video, right? Which is May 29th, Monday. It's Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day, everyone. Thank you for your service if you served. So if we look at mortgages here, and we go back to May 10th, which is when 10-year treasury started to come up, we'll see that right here, May 11th was actually the low. Okay. And then it's been rising ever since, right there along with 10-year treasuries. So you see, guys, right here, here's the charts, here's the data. Okay. 10-year treasuries and inflation drive the mortgage rates. And we can see that ever since May 10th, 10-year treasuries have been rising. The closer and closer we get and not having a deal, as far as the debt ceiling goes, and mortgages, what are they going to do? They're going to follow right in line. So that's why we're seeing 7.1, which is massively, massively high. So Zillow wrote an article that said that the debt ceiling default would send the U.S. Housing market back into a deep freeze. Okay, so they kind of went through and they actually created some data around what would happen if U.S. actually defaulted on their debt, which they admit is a very, very highly unlikely scenario. They say right here, a debt default is very unlikely. But a few scenarios projects from Zillow shows that it would decrease sales sharply as mortgage costs balloon. And so basically, in essence, what the projections show that if we did hit a default, home sale volume will likely decline sharply with the projected defects of up to 23% fewer sales in the hardest hitting months. So they're saying that we're going to have way less sales. I absolutely agree with that. If we did hit a default, then we would have much less sales. They also say home values could be 5% lower than their baseline in a no default forecast by the end of 2024. Okay. And so they just kind of talk about what's happening here, interest rates. They think interest rates would hit 8%, 8.24, I think it was, by September 10th or something like that. And Well, the reason being is because if that happened, what would happen? Well, 10-year treasuries would increase just like they are right now. What's happening right now with 10-year treasuries is an absolute proof that what they're saying is true. Okay. The 10-year treasuries are going up just on the fact that they hadn't got to a deal yet. Okay. There's no telling what they would do if we actually defaulted. Right. And nobody really knows. It would be catastrophic. They also call for unemployment to really skyrocket. Okay. And so if you look right here, this is interest rates. And this is their projection if we did get into a default scenario where right now we're around 6.5. And they say default scenario bumps us into the 8s. And then it slowly kind of comes down and gets around a little over 6 by the end of 2024. Okay. This is unemployment. Right now we're around 3.5%. This is what they project would happen if we got into a default scenario. Boom, it would go to 8, a lot like mortgage rates. And then it would slowly come down over the next, year and a half. This is number of sales. So this is the scary one right here. If we defaulted, Zillow projects that we would dip into the under 3.4 million sales on an annualized basis. Right. Now, that's a crazy number because 2008, we had 4 million sales. So to dip down into the under 3.4 range would be absolutely insane. But then look, it comes back and then we get back to the 4.2 range, which is not too far from where we are now, really. We're right there in that 4.3-ish range right now by the end of 2024. So all these scenarios kind of have us getting back a little back to normal by the end of next year if this were to happen. And this is the price differences. They're showing prices increasing here in a no default, and then the orange here shows in the default situation, which is not devastating, right? None as far as prices go, they're not showing anything devastating here. So this is something to watch. It's 10-year treasuries. It's 30-year fix. If you really want to pay attention and try to really stay on top of this stuff, these are the kind of things we need to look out for and keep an eye on. We also need to keep an eye on how this debt deal actually works out, how the vote goes in Congress, moving in through the rest of the week, and making sure that something is cemented by Monday, which I feel 99.9999% confident that that's going to happen. But we still want to keep an eye on it because when it happens, we're going to see things get a little better. We're going to see 10-year treasuries start to come down, right? That's how this is going to affect us immediately. Day one, I believe we'll start to see 10-year treasuries ease off. We'll see 30-year fixed ease down, and we'll kind of get right back where we were maybe 3 weeks ago, where we had mortgage rates in the 6.25-ish to 6.3, 6.4 range. 10-year treasuries will be back down where they were, and we'll be in a more comfortable place. Not really where we want to end up, but we'll be back in a comfortable place. And then what? Okay. This is very interesting when you look at this data. Now, I've been calling the whole time for prices to go positive year over year in July. Why? Because right here, this is July right here. Let's see. Let me get back to prices. Median price. So this is the beginning of July right here, 2022. You see how there's this wall right here? I just think that we're going to bust through that wall. But you see what we're doing here in 2023? It's still ticking up. It's inching up. Like we may go positive year over year before July. It may happen in June at some point at this rate. We'll just kind of see what happens. But we know that when we get over here in this area, July, August, September, October, November, my opinion, we're definitely going to end up in a hugely positive year over year price scenario. Now look at active listings. Okay. Right now, as we speak, we're 0.86% under 2022. Okay. Now 22 was under at this point in the year, right? We're talking about today, this point in the year. Over the last couple of weeks, we are under 2022 right now, inventory wise, but we were already well under 2021, the year of the boom. We're under the year of the boom. We're under 2022, which means for this point in the year, we're the lowest that we've ever been in history. Now, if you go back to January, February of 2022, we were lower than we are right this second. But I'm saying for this time of year, we're the lowest we've ever been. We just crossed the line of 2022, and we're 0.86% under where we were in 2022. That is absolutely incredible to see this happen. So we're looking for prices to go positive year over year. We're looking for mortgage rates to continue to dwindle down, and this debt ceiling deal will immediately alleviate a lot of that pressure on 30-year fixed. And then this is our big date that we're looking out for, June 13th. This is going to be the next CPI report. So all the CPI reports we're watching incredibly closely right now. And what's been happening, every report is inflation has been dwindling down, and it's been rocky. There's been parts of the report that are good. There's been parts of the report that are okay. There's been parts of the report that are not so great. But what we're going to see is that continue to level out. It's definitely heading in the right direction. So June 13th, mark your calendar for that. That's going to be another big date. So all in all, here's where we are. Debt ceiling is on its way to getting worked out, which is going to alleviate 30-year fixed, 10-year treasuries. June 13th is going to come along with some better inflation numbers. It's going to replace last year's numbers. And we're going to move into this place where we have lower mortgage rates, and we're going to unleash the beast of buyers that are out there waiting to buy. We've got millennials who want to own, 98% want to become homeowners. We've got a record amount of them, 33-year-olds entering into the market right now this year. It's going to continue for another 16 years. We've got existing homeowners who are dying to move, that they feel trapped because they're sitting on 4% interest rates. We also have people coming from different countries who are coming into the country and they need a place to live. So that's going to put upward pressure on home prices. That's going to put pressure on demand of rental units and housing and everything. So we've got so much happening right now when it comes to demand. You've also got Rocket Mortgage coming out with 1% mortgage rates. United Mortgage doing the same thing. We've got 40-year mortgages now. So there's a lot happening to try to help affordability, because here's the thing. I think the government has realized, and I think mortgage companies, I think everyone's realized that, listen, prices aren't going down. It's simple economics, supply and demand. So what am I doing? Buying houses. Closed on one a couple of weeks ago.
All right. So he brought it home there. Basically, the long and the short here of the summary is the debt ceiling is going to be alleviated. We're going to see better CPI numbers, which should help with mortgage rates, right? And the lower the mortgage rates go, those are essentially the driver of the market. And he's predicting, like, because of that, a lot of people here in the future are the pent up demand of buyers. There's a lot of people that want to buy right now, but they're on the fence either because of affordability or they just don't want to spend the money that they have to right now. But then I'm seeing a lot of people in the comments right now, David, say, well, you got to buy something soon. Like, better to buy something today than a year from now or 2 years. So what do you say to the people right now that maybe want to get in the market? Maybe they don't want to wait till the interest rates drop. What advice would you have for somebody who's just ready to go?
Well, what would stop somebody from buying right now? What's the objection for someone who wants to buy, but they think they shouldn't?
Affordability. Maybe they can't,
Okay.
they can't afford it.
So the answer to that is house hacking, right?
Mhm.
We've often talked about there's a spectrum in life. On one end is comfort, on the other end is profit. So if it's comfortable to work at 7-Eleven and never have to test yourself, it's comfortable to be in debt and borrow money that you don't have. People got away with getting into debt because inflation makes the money that you've borrowed cheaper to pay back. So it's easier to get into debt in inflationary environments. And housing works the same way. It's comfortable to have a nice, big, beautiful house. So you don't have to share with anybody, but it's more profitable to get out of 7-Eleven and go take a tougher job, maybe experience some rejection, maybe experience some stress. It's comfortable to not go work out and eat like the whale, but it's more profitable for your health to do things differently. House hacking sacrifices comfort for the benefit of profitability. Is that simple. When I hear someone say, I don't want a house hack because I like my space, I hear someone saying, I don't want to diet because I like chocolate cake. I'm like, I think everybody feels that way. It just matters, like, is it worth it to you to go one way or the other? So if a home is unaffordable, the answer is house hacking. What are some other objections somebody might have?
The interest rates are too high.
Yes, they are too high, but that means they are too high compared to what I'm used to them being. So they're actually not too high, because if you compare them to 12%, 13%, 14%, they're not too high. Now, they may be too high to make a property cash flow. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay, here's where it's going to get depressing, but I am committed to keeping it real with you guys. Remember when we were at Brandon's event, we were talking to Jay Papazan?
Yes.
He said a thing that would not normally be provocatively insightful, but it hit me so hard. He said, well, because we were talking about my fear that only wealthy people will end up owning to invest in real estate. I don't want that to happen, but that is the way we're going right now. Rates are going up. Prices are not coming down. Wealthy people can still buy that real estate, keeping prices high. He said, in support of that, he's like, yeah, you can still buy. It'll cash flow if you put 50% down. And I was like, yeah, that is very true. Why did I not think of that? When we say it won't cash flow, and everybody else here is in the same boat as I was, what that means is it won't cash flow with 20% down. It won't cash flow with 3.5% down. Okay. Like Kyle's smiling because you're realizing you were doing that too. Like all of us that get here that complain properties aren't cash flowing, what we're really saying is they won't cash flow for what I have to put into it. That doesn't mean they don't cash flow. You put 50% down, you put 70% down, you put 100% down. All of a sudden, these properties are cash flowing just fine. Now, the return on your investment, the cash on cash return is not incredible, and it's not good compared to what we're used to. But that is a point to consider when we say a home is not affordable, interest rates are high. What about people that have a lot of money and they don't care what interest rates are? They don't care. What if interest rates go to 12% and people just start putting 65% down on a home? Unless we build more homes and we get more supply coming in, I don't see prices coming down. Or the other option is we could create another investment vehicle for money to flow to. Okay, like if AI revolutionizes something about finance, and so now people can invest in AI companies and get a big share of the profit, or crowdfunding happens that people could pool their money together and buy a Ferrari and then rent the Ferrari out on Turo, and people are getting 20% returns. You could see a lot of the money that is going into real estate go to that, which would lower the demand for real estate, which would let the prices come down. Other than that, it has to be more supply. So my overall picture here is that the more money we create, the more expensive real estate becomes. The more we try to push rates up to stop inflation, the more unaffordable real estate becomes. So you get prices appreciating and unaffordability at the same time, which is like a toxic poison for people that want to build wealth through real estate that are not super wealthy, which is most of the people that follow me. I'm kind of the blue collar person, which means you need to have urgency. You need to be looking at sacrificing your comfort. If you think you're doing great and you're like, I got 3 properties and I'm sitting pretty, you're not going to feel like you're sitting pretty if homes become unaffordable. I don't want to scare everybody to say go buy real estate. We could see prices come down for a short period of time. But based off what we've seen with the debt ceiling being raised, inflation occurring, money only pouring into real estate right now, like no one's really wanting to go buy other things. You don't see as many people making money off of angel investors aren't investing in tech like they were. That was a big thing. People aren't buying NFTs. Cryptocurrencies aren't as popular as they once were. People, as much as we think the real estate market's hot, I think the stock market's even more inflated. You have less control, right? I don't see a world where prices will come down unless demand decreases. So those are some options I can see that could lead to demand decreasing. And if we see prices come down, it's probably because something like that happened.
Yeah, not to mention incomes are not going up proportionately with inflation, right? This probably wouldn't be an issue if your income was going up disproportionately more than inflation, but it's the opposite. And so it becomes a huge affordability issue, whether you're just buying it as a primary residence and you just want to live in it and you want to, live the American dream, or if you're looking to buy a bunch of real estate. We have a guest speaker or a guest caller here that's going to come in. Do you want to answer Jason's question first?
Yeah, I want to make this point before we bring in to Holland. One thing I want to say is in the book Pillars that's going to be coming out, I cover what Kyle just said, that your income, if you're getting a 3% pay raise at work or a 5% pay raise at work, but inflation's 10%, you're losing 50 to 70% of your purchasing power every year. Or maybe not quite 50, 70% of that, right? But like you're falling behind 5 to 7% to inflation. Over a 5-year period, that's 25 to 35% reduction in purchasing power. That is very significant. And so that would not be as scary if you knew it was happening. Let me ask you this, Kyle, if your boss came to you when you were in the hospital and said, we're going to cut your pay by 10% next year, would you just be like, okay, whatever? Or would you respond?
I'd start looking for jobs elsewhere.
Yeah, I need another job. I need to negotiate this. I need to invest my money somewhere else. What if you said, I'm going to cut your pay by 10% every year for the next 5 years? In 5 years, you'd be making half as much money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you would be like, there's no way in hell that's going to happen. You kick it into gear. You change something about your life. You get rid of comfort. Well, inflation's doing that to us every year, but they're not telling us it's happening. It's carbon monoxide. You don't realize they're taking money away. That's what's so freaking sneaky about it. This is what, and by the way, it's not just America. Ray Dalio has an incredible video about how this has happened to almost every single world power in the history of the earth. Has had a very similar cycle where they have to deflate their currency by inflating how much of it there is. They deflate the value of it. And so this is not unique to our situation, but this is why people who invest their money in hard assets like real estate, I don't even know if we're growing our wealth. We're just keeping it. We're keeping on to our wealth instead of losing it. Jason's comment here says, do you think the lack of inventory in the residential / primary residence space will keep prices propped up in traditional vacation and luxury markets? The short answer is yes. When there's a lack of inventory and it's a good area where people make good incomes, prices will always stay solid. They may temporarily dip like we saw in 2010. But what I noticed was the best markets barely went down at all. The worst markets got smashed. So you're always safer off to be investing in better markets, even when they're expensive. But here's a thought I wanted to share with everybody. This will give you some relief as to why you feel like you're a bad investor because you're not getting the returns you were. Jason invests in short-term rentals. All right. Jason could admit in the last 3, 4, 5 years, the amount of investors that have bought short-term rentals has dramatically gone up. Everybody's doing it. Kyle, why would you say that a real estate investor that used to just buy a duplex now wants to get into the short-term rental space?
More revenue.
And why is more revenue important right now?
Because nobody can cash flow with the least amount or the most amount.
That's how it works. A duplex is easier. A triplex is easier. You just buy it, give it to a property manager, you're done. But if you try to buy it and it loses money every month, you can't buy the duplex. So now you're asking the question, what could I buy? How could I get more revenue? Short-term rental. I didn't want to manage a property. I didn't want to have to do it the hard way, but I got no option. So as we've seen this increase in demand for real estate and the increase in interest rates, it's eliminated options we used to have, pushes people into buying short-term rentals. Now, on one hand, that makes it harder for Jason to buy his next one. Okay. This is why everybody's out here fighting for deals and they can't get them. Because more people have been pushed into this asset class. They've been pushed into real estate, then they've been pushed out of duplexes, out of triplexes, out of fourplexes, out of commercial multifamily properties because they can't raise money at the cheap rates. And that's become super expensive as cap rates have gone down. Short-term rentals is the only thing that's left. Not only is it harder to get them, here's the thought I was having today in the shower. It is also less profitable when you get it. Because more people have gotten into that asset class, and now you are competing with more short-term rental Airbnb hosts. So the tenants, it's not like we have tons more people coming into the country that all want to travel to these areas. Your population grows at the rate that it grows in. And really, in some cases, wages are not keeping up with inflation, so people travel less. But you have more inventory, more supply fighting for the same amount of demand. So it was harder to get into it. You had to compete with more people to get into it. You had to pay more for it. You had to pay a higher rate. And then once you have it, you're making less revenue because you're competing. That's what happens with the short-term rental space. And it's the same thing we see happening with all of real estate. There's too many freaking people that have all got into the space because they don't have other options.
Okay, so what do you propose?
I propose that people stop just trying to make money through real estate. You got to get out of this idea that you have your job and you get to be comfortable at your job, and then real estate's going to make up the gap. It used to be the case when no one else was doing it. When you could have discipline to save money and invest in real estate, you had a competitive advantage. That's all you needed. When the currency was more or less stable, it was just going up by a little bit every year. This was a great method. You are now out of that world. You are now in a world where everyone is fighting and competing with you to build the wealth that is available to be built before it turns into a socialistic country where wealth building is incredibly difficult. You got to get out of your comfort zone. If you are comfortable working at that job, but you're not getting pay raises every year, you need to start a business. You need to work overtime. You need to get a job where they pay you more, and maybe you work harder. Okay. If you were like, I like to work 5 hours a day, not 6, because I'm not addicted to working. I like to have balance. Like, okay, that's nice. Do people in Vietnam get to say that? Do people in Thailand get to say that? Do people in Russia get to say that? Are people in Brazil saying, I only want to work 5-hour days? That's a luxury that only Americans even get to think about. And then we promote it like, yeah, work is bad. I made a story on my Instagram. I think
that's where yesterday. I was going.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was yesterday.
That's reality for everyone else in the world. But we in America feel like it's unfair if our boss asks us to work hard. It's unfair if we have to give value. It's unfair if we have to make customers happy. Like, we deserve to not work at all. But if we have to work, we shouldn't work hard. Everywhere else in the world, they're not thinking that. Chinese people aren't thinking that way. That's why we're importing all the products that they're making, because they're making stuff that's cheaper than we are, because their people work harder for less money. This is not me saying that I think that we should make everyone into slave labor. This is me saying that Americans, if you're listening to this and you're someone who says, I want to build wealth, you need to look at it like you are on an escalator that is going down. That is what inflation is doing to your purchasing power. Okay, this is in the book Pillars, like this literal description. You're going down. And if you don't move anywhere, you are slowly going down, but it doesn't feel like it, right, Kyle? Because you don't think you're walking downstairs. You're just like, man, why is it that used to be here and now it's higher? That's weird when you look off to the side. That steak used to cost $9, now it's $14. Like,
it's like when you're when you're boogie boarding out in the ocean and the current takes you, like, wait, didn't we start way over there?
Yes,
what happened?
That was literally when you and I were out in the kayak when we were whale watching. We were like, how did we get this far? The wind is way stronger than we thought. You're not paying attention, okay? But if you want to get wealth, you want to go higher, you got to run up and down escalator. And it is harder. You will sweat more. It is more effort for less results. You'd rather run up the up escalator, which is what it was the last 8 years. Some people didn't run at all. They just stood on it and they got to gain wealth doing nothing. That has changed. The good news is nobody around you is running. They are resentful that they have to run because they think that they're going up and they're actually going down. The bad news is when you run, it will be harder than what it used to be. So this is my wake-up call to everybody. You're going to look back in a couple years and hear this video and say, like, yeah, David warned me. Just like I warned you in 2018 or 2019 when everyone thought the market was going to crash. They're printing a bunch of money. You need to be buying assets in the middle of COVID when everyone's like, oh, we're going to have the biggest recession ever, the biggest depression we've ever had. And I watched the government creating massive amounts of money. And I'm like, there's no way. This is stupid, but this is what has to happen. Now I'm saying your idea of hard work is probably not hard work. Your idea of bringing value to your job is probably not really bringing value to your job. You've been on the up escalator. It's now going down. You want to get ahead, quit relying on cash flow from real estate, quit relying on immediate gratification. I'm going to buy 2 properties and in 2 years, I'm going to be retired, and move into, I have to run. I have to work hard. I have to make more money. I got to get out of my comfort zone, and I have to buy real estate for 10 years down the road, for 15 years down the road, not for 1 or 2 years down the road. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. A couple points I want to add on to that. It's funny because we've talked about the comfort and profitability spectrum when it comes to house hacking, right? But it really now has to do with all real estate investing, right? The more comfortable you want to be, then the less profitable you're going to be. But the more profitable you want to be, the more uncomfortable you're going to have to be. I talk to a lot of real estate investors or aspiring real estate investors every single day here locally in Sacramento, in the Bay Area, but then even across the nation, people just wanting some information. And you'd be surprised when I tell people, like, listen, in order to find a cash flowing deal or to be able to get the thing that you want, you're going to have to work a lot harder than you used to. And a lot of them think I'm lying and they hang up and then they go to the next agent. Cause I talk to other agents who talk to the same person and they just kind of keep jumping until they get the answer that they want to hear. But the truth is, like, no, you have to work a lot harder, or you just got to come in with a bigger down payment, which means you're working harder somewhere else. Right. And so I'm in agreement and I am seeing that every single day. It's almost like people go with their tail tucked behind their legs when they realize, like, oh, I'm not going to be able to find that deal. No, you can find it. Like, you might have to go off market. You might have to go knock on a bunch of doors. You might have to negotiate something on your own. Either way, it's going to be a lot of work. There are still deals to be had, and you can cash flow on day one, but it's a lot harder than what it was before. And we have to wake up to that. The other thing is, during so many people who left their job, I saw a stat. I think it was like 96% of people who quit their job and went to another job. What do they call it? The great recession exit or something, the great exit. A lot of people leaving their jobs. 96% of them wish they wouldn't have left their job. They either miss their old boss, they miss what they were doing in their other career, or they miss their coworkers, they miss their team, they miss their friends. So it's pretty interesting how so many people.
Perspective, right, Kyle?
Yeah,
that's such a good point, because right now in this world, we're like, oh, you have a job, you're a loser. I pursue financial freedom. Okay, like we look at work like it's for suckers. But imagine that you live in like poverty or at a time when the economy's not crushing it, like during the Depression. Having a job is a status symbol. Your husband still works. They found a job. That's incredible. Like, how blessed are you that you have a job? It is all about perspective. And I'm only calling this out because I see so many people that think working is evil and bad, and it's not fair that they should have to work. They should just have money, which is what leads to socialism. It's that belief that I shouldn't have to work. The money should come from somewhere else, versus there could very well become a time where you're like, oh, you get to work. That's awesome. You have freedom. You have a way to make your own wealth. You actually have a path that you can create. They let you. In Russia 30 years ago, you couldn't just start a business. You couldn't go do it, because if you tried to, the powers that be that had the political party on their side would say, Bob over there just started a falafel shop across the street from mine. Take him out. And in a communistic environment, they just show up and they're like, you're done. We're either taxing you 90%, or we've rezoned this and eminent domains coming in. We're taking this over, making it a yoga studio so people get more hungry and they want that guy's chicken. Like, you did not get a fair shake. We have the most incredible entrepreneurialistic, capitalistic environment to get a fair shake. And rather than being excited about it, we are bitter that we have to work. And I'm just trying to say, while you may look back at this and say, I remember the days where you could start your own business and it wasn't that hard to get ahead compared to other people in the world.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's the work. Like, if you don't want to, if you want to work 5 hours a day, that's fine. But listen, like, it's the entitlement more than it is the work, right? It's the, I shouldn't have to work in order to get this big goal that I have, or to be able to get this much money, right? There's going to be a disconnect there. The thing is, if your goal was this high, then you're just going to have to work harder now to get there, right? Like you said, you're going up that escalator that's actually going down. So you're going against the wind. And if you need to adjust your goals and bring them down, that's fine too. But if your goals are still all these things, super high, don't walk around and complain about how hard it is. Recognize, like, no, I just have to swim and paddle a lot harder to get to that destination that I want to go to.
Very good point. And I heard Angela say, but self-care.
So she's kind of hitting my point. Yeah.
Self-care is important. That does not mean that it comes at the expense of working. Like, you can have self-care and you can work. They're not mutually exclusive.
Yes. No, it's a good point. We're not like glutton for pain and for like just working like a slave or working till your death. Like, David and I have fun. David's coming to my house on Friday to hang out, play video games with me and my kids. We probably won't even talk work. We'll be talking just about fun stuff. So, but you're right. It is, working hard is frowned upon. Didn't you say that in your Insta story the other day too, David?
It was something along those lines. This is
Yeah.
what brought that up. I get like 10 to 15 DMs a day, which I hate because I already have a hard enough time keeping up with DMs. And so now when I get people blowing me up with garbage, it makes it harder for me to communicate with the database. And like I told you, that's my goal, is to pour into the database more. Saying, hey, love your content, bro. You're amazing. Love what you're doing here. It's always the same thing from some 22-year-old young man who's like telling me he's also a business owner. And he's like, I have a plan that I can explode your growth. I can make you short form content. They're basically trying to get me to pay them to make videos. And I remember I said to you, I'm pretty sure the AI came up with some way to make it really easy to make videos, because why else would they be so interested in pitching me on this? Because if they had to work to do it, they wouldn't be actually in my DMs. They probably found some way to get AI to DM people this copied and pasted message, right? And then offering an AI solution. Like, they have this program, I think you told me, that it will go through an entire podcast, pick out the part that person's talking, put captions on it, decide what would be the most relevant thing, put it on your Instagram. 14 videos really quickly that they can now charge me, $10 per video. So they made $140 to do nothing. And they're all over there thinking that they're so smart. Oh, I don't have to work. I know technology and you old people don't. And I'm using AI and you're not, and you're dumb. Not understanding that there will come a point where Instagram will buy that and do it for me.
Just do it. Yeah.
I don't need to pay you, or I'll get that app and I'll do it. And I don't need you. The easier it is that you, like, the lower the barrier to entry that you find, the easier that is to be replaced. And that's what I see in so much of our young people, is a race to find the easiest thing they can. How do I automate this? How do I make it easier? How do I make it faster so I don't have to work and I can go live my life and have my fun? Not understanding that means they are less important and they're easier to be replaced.
That's really good. Take it back to the debt ceiling here. I know we had D waiting to come on. D, it looks like you're in your car. Are you safe to talk? Thumbs up. Okay. She said, give her a second. Okay. We'll give me like a thumbs up when you're ready, and David and I will fill the space with this. Jason asked if we're going to do a next Friday night live with,
because you said I was coming over Friday night. That's why it's Sunday night. You just had your days
he's
mixed
coming
up
on Sunday, not Friday. But that'd be kind of cool, like to maybe one day have the chickens do it and the goose and stuff. Like we've done one in Arizona with the cactus. We've done one in Hawaii. Now we could do one with the chickens, right?
That's right.
All right. Let's see here. We got D here to hang out with us tonight. And I know you had a little bit of opinion on or maybe a question about real estate in this current economy. And then also, a little bit about the debt ceiling. But tell us, what are your thoughts after hearing what you've heard so far?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay. So, does anybody remember like 10 cents ramen noodles going to school?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
So recently I spent like 50 cents on ramen noodles. I actually went somewhere else. It was $1. Did ramen noodles get better? Like, is the quality better? That's what's happening to your money, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, I think that as a hospital worker who is an occupational therapist, man, I work really hard and I love it. I love loving people. I mean, it's great. But watch this. They are killing me on this W-2 income, man. And that's where they're going to get the money. David's talking about where the taxes. They're going to tax the rich. The rich don't work half the time, okay?
Yeah.
Or they own businesses and they're able to slide a lot of the of expenses under like tax spend. The only people who are really left out here as sitting ducks, and the poor, of course, are not really being taxed as well. It's going to be people like me who are working. It's working class. So, I mean, it's just such this big wake up call I've had over the pandemic, another topic entirely, that if you're not getting a business, if you're not getting involved with thinking long term in your investments, I always wanted to get into real estate. I'm an emerging real estate investor. I just went ahead and signed up for the real estate rookie boot camp. So I'm really excited, but I know I need a community because I know nothing about it, right? Learning about every other asset class and just trying different ways, because They are going to eat up these W-2 incomes alive. Last thing I wanted to say, I know that wasn't really a question. Today, I went into a room today. We had an employee working for the hospital, 47 years. He gets an infection in his foot. He tells me today they told him he has to retire. He's sitting there in a depression. 47 years, he got up every single day. He came to his W-2 job. Okay, now he's got an infection in his foot to tell him he's got to retire. This guy was knocked out of sleep for 47 years, getting up, and now the reality is you can't do what you want to do anymore. What is his retirement looking like? I'm just saying it's a big wake-up call. So I'm thankful for the green team, and all I want to say is what woke me up from thinking, hey, I just pay $1,000 of rent in LA. I don't worry about it. Okay, my $1,000 in rent is airspace. I am paying for airspace. At the end of the year, yeah, I only paid $12,000, but I took $12,000 and I stuck it right in a trash can. I didn't do anything to invest it in real estate for my kids. I didn't go ahead and bite off the bullet and get uncomfortable and go ahead and pay that $4,000 mortgage that would eventually be coming down. And then over time, I would build equity. I mean, it's just really time to wake up. That little bit of money that you pay is really costing you on the back end. That's all I got to say. I'm sorry, I really had no question, but I really love the show. Thank you so much.
I think everybody here is loving your perspective on this. We love hearing it. And so I can, because there's always going to be people that will hear what I say. And if my last Instagram post about Target is any indication, like they're not going to ask questions. They're just going to label me as a terrible human being just because I mentioned Target stock has dropped. I even give an opinion on it, right? So people will hear this and they will come out and say, David believes that only rich people should own real estate and he's against anybody else having it, which is the opposite, right? What I am concerned about, what breaks my heart, is someone like you who's busting your ass doing what you can to earn money the honest way.
That's
who's
right.
literally thinking about how I can put my money that you've earned in a place that your kids can have it. You're not talking about, I want a new Gucci bag. I want to take a vacation to Bali. I want to wear, I want to have Prada everywhere. You're talking about, I want to help my kids.
Right.
And what is likely to happen is that this debt problem is going to lead to taxes being raised on everybody. Yep. And the W-2 workers are the easiest ones to get it from, because when you're 1099, you have to report what you made. They can't track it. The W-2, that doesn't mean that they won't come after 1099 people, right? But it is easier. The low-hanging fruit is a W-2 person because they can take it from your employee before they take it from you. They can easily be like, well, we're going to tax you 80% of your money, but we're going to provide public housing. We're going to provide the equivalent of food stamps. We don't use stamps anymore, but some form of electronic benefit transfer that. Right. And just be happy with this. We're going to take care of everything. You don't need to do it yourself. And we've now traded a life of entrepreneurialism and freedom and what I want to do. And I get to spend my money on what I want for, well, you're going to take what we offer. And then we're going to take these taxes. And that's what bothers me, is the person like you, who's not getting a hand from anybody, who's providing services to people like that guy you talked to. Okay. For example, he's found out his feet were going to stop him from working. Was that guy in a pretty miserable space?
Today, when I saw him, he's absolutely.
When you first heard about it.
Oh, he just told me today.
Okay, but he's down, right? He's in a vulnerable place. Right?
Yeah, oh yeah, he's in the hospital, the same hospital that told him that he's got to retire.
Yeah.
Good. So here's what I'm getting at with that.
Yeah.
The quality of the interaction he has with the nursing staff or the hospital staff makes a huge difference in his life. He just got told terrible news. Okay. You could either have a staff member that empathizes with that is kind. I'm getting chills as I'm even saying this. Okay.
Yeah.
That will take the edge off and give him hope.
That's
that will be there at his worst time and say, listen, you could still do these other things. Maybe even bring up some of the information that you're hearing here. And dude, you got to retire from this job. What about that? Or he can get a person in a communistic environment who doesn't give an F, who's getting paid nothing, who's getting taxed 80%, has a shitty attitude, and basically is like, that's not my problem, bro. Here, take 2 of these pills and be on your way. Okay.
Yeah.
That is a very different world from these 2 different economic systems. And that's what concerns me. And that's why we're talking about it today. Even if we become this world where they're taxing a ton of us. You're going to be that guy in the hospital getting bad news from a doctor that doesn't pay attention, doesn't listen, doesn't care. A nurse who's like, I just have to get my chart filled out and be on my way. You're not my
That's right.
problem. Everyone's going to shuffle everybody else all over the place because no one cares when we remove incentive.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. But you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. You know,
Yeah.
It's globalism. It's a different face of communism. They're trying to sell you something else, universal basic income, but it's coming at this slow pace and a slow rate. You know what I'm saying?
You know what happens if
it's
it comes too
frightening.
fast? People have a knee-jerk
Wake up.
response and they say, no way.
There you go. They
So
wake up.
Yes, it's a very slow. Remember when gas prices first went over $3 a gallon? And
Right.
everyone had to now?
That's
and
right.
Like, okay.
Right.
You back off.
They're coming back up too. Yeah.
And they came back, and did we freak out when they hit it again? Nope.
Right.
We're like,
No.
okay, whatever. I've already seen that. And that happens every time.
No, it's a frog in the pot. It's frog in the pot. You know, if you stick him in the hot water, he jumps right out. But if you let him sit in there and you slowly just bring up the heat. Listen, I know that I am grateful for communities of people that you're offering. Free. It is amazing. Me and my husband have been watching Big Pockets, and we just got addicted to all of the people that are on there. My gosh. And just the fact that you're doing this content for free. It's like, I'm so blessed to be in America where you can actually do what you want to do. But you're right. If we don't stand up and vote some of these people out of office who are not dealing with our needs and are trying to push a communist type of agenda, not to get you political, it's going to be a very different America for your kids and the kids that come after this. So it's time to stand up now. Absolutely. I agree. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, DeHolland. Appreciate you.
Absolutely, man.
Hey, call back anytime. You were great.
All right. Hey, thanks, guys. All right. Love you. Take care.
Thanks. See ya. You know what's
Now,
scary?
I would add to what she said. Can you hold your thought, or are you going to forget?
Yeah.
We can't individually control who gets voted in. We can vote, but like my opinion on this stuff is that, and please don't forget your thought, because I
won't.
know I jumped in. It doesn't make sense to get angry about it. Okay, like even if I disagree, I tend to believe the majority should rule. Okay, so there's certain things that I think should be laws or should not be laws, but I'm just not so narcissistic that I think my opinion matters so much.
Mhm.
If the majority of people want something that I don't, that's what should be the case. Okay, like in general, I lean towards like, yeah, I think this is better, but if everybody else wants that, majority wins. That's how the country should work. Okay, so I don't know that we're going to control which politicians. The majority is going to vote for who they want, and they have a right to get that. And if somebody wins the election and they want it fair and square, even if I disagree with them, that's what happens. But I can still make moves that put me and my family and my loved ones in a better position, regardless of if I don't like the direction that the politicians are taking the country. And we're making content like this while we can, because who knows how long this stuff will even be allowed to be
That's a good
broadcast.
point. Yeah.
Right. Because I see so many people that are unhappy with the direction the country's going, wasting all their energy being angry about it. And this is not about DeHolland. Okay. This is more like really from my Instagram post the other day about the ESG scores. It does not benefit anyone to go and blow up someone else's political opinion with theirs, to name call, to criticize, to get pissed, to use curse words, to go scream about it. If you see it happening and there's a tidal wave that's coming, where can you move? Can you get a surfboard and catch the wave? Like what can be done is way better than saying, I'm just going to go yell at that tidal wave.
Yeah, and Dee's story resonates with me a ton, because what I was going to say was what was scary, like, do you remember when everybody in Detroit and the factory jobs were getting laid off, right?
Yeah.
At that time, we were like, yeah, we can kind of see that happening. We can see that coming. So everybody was like, well, get into healthcare. That's a safe area, right? You'll never have a problem working in healthcare. You'll be secure there forever. What we're starting to see, like you said, this tidal wave is coming, and why I resonate with what she's talking about, because I used to be in that spot. I used to work as a speech therapist, like, in healthcare. And for the longest time, I thought, man, this is a safe and secure position. I'll never have to not work again. It wasn't until you like twisted my arm and said, nah, you got to get out of it. You got to start learning how to surf, Kyle, because there is a tidal wave coming down the road. Right. And so over the last like 4 or 5 years, I've learned how to surf pretty well alongside you. And I think that's why I love doing stuff like this. It's why I love running the Spartan League. That's why I love coaching people. I love to help people who are in the same position that I was learn, like, you can build some skills and you can be self-differentiated, as Alexander said, outside of your W-2. You can build up skills. So it's near and dear to my heart. And what she was sharing, like, absolutely breaks my heart too.
But she understands the urgency of it. You know,
Yes.
she's like, I don't know how long before they take all my income from taxing me. I don't know how long before I won't be able to make my own money. So what can I do to save that $1,000 of rent that I'm throwing away in airspace to plan for my family's future? That's the right attitude. It's not just get angry and go post things on your social media that become more and more and more extreme compared to the other people, right? And then they do the same thing, and you end up with these huge social media wars that are burning energy in a way that's not productive.
Yeah, and go look at your budget right now, and in your personal budget that you guys have, right? If there's things you can cut out, cut them out. I don't care if they're uncomfortable. Get used to living uncomfortably. I've always said the happiest time I was in my life was when I sold my house that was way too big and moved into a tiny little halfplex with me, my wife, and 2 kids, less than 1,000 square foot. We were happier with less, right? And we had more mobility to be able to make progress towards paying down our debt and being able to build the skills that we needed to build, right, to get into entrepreneurship and real estate full time. So if your issue right now is, oh, I'm too comfortable, start making yourself uncomfortable. Look at what areas of your life you can cut back, and you can say, yeah, this is a want. This is not a need. This is not something that our family needs to be spending money on right now.
Great point. That's a great point. When I was writing Pillars, it was actually funny that, like, the publishing team and me kind of clashed about it. I had this example about going through your budgeting, which is what we do in Spartan League, right? I mean, you join, you get taught, you get a spreadsheet you should be tracking your budgeting with. You have apps you put on your phone, and you start tracking your money, and you do start living by a budget. And I had this perspective that's in Pillars where you take all of your expenses from highest to lowest, and you ask the question of, how could I reduce this, or how could I eliminate this? Right. And I gave an example of food, because, like, a typical person would say it is, and really a typical person would say housing is impossible to get rid of. I have to pay somewhere to live, but that's not true, because you could house hack. You wouldn't even think about that if you didn't listen to the Bigger Pockets podcast, unless you were asking the question, how could I get rid of this? Well, food is a thing we all have to pay money for. Yeah, everybody has to buy food. You can't help it, right? And in the book, I was like, well, what if you didn't believe that that was necessarily the case? What if you said, hey, I'm willing to move into your house and babysit your kids, or be your cleaner, or cook meals for you, right? In exchange for free room and board, and I get to eat your food. Most people would not want to be that uncomfortable. But let's say you're 22 to 27 years old, single, right? That is a way that you could eliminate both housing and food at the same time.
Yep.
Okay. And you could do that while you are growing your ability to earn income, whether you're in college, whether you're working a job, you're learning a trade, you're building a business. You have this 5-year period where I can't go start a business. I have bills to pay. What if you did something like that? People are going to jump in and say, David's saying that everybody should, be a slave to someone else. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, let your brain ask that question. How could this expense be removed? What could happen so that I didn't have to pay for this? And that's what we're asking people to do in Pillars and in Spartan League. And you're giving really good examples. All you're giving up is comfortability. That's it.
And our level of comfort that we have in America is so much more than the rest of the world, right? So it's like you said, it's about perspective, right? And so we could give up so much more in our day-to-day lives. And honestly, I think a lot of us, if we did that, I'm not necessarily a minimalist, but if we did that, we'd probably be a lot happier, because there'd be less stress, less things to worry about, less distractions. And there'd be probably more like wholesome conversation and things like this. So
that's in Pillars too. Like, stop spending money on vacations and instead just take your family to the beach. The beach is the same experience, whether you're a billionaire or you're broke. It's the same beach. Take your family on a hike, right? You don't have to spend a bunch of money. It's not like you had to go to Disneyland. It's not like you had to go to a fancy dinner. You're probably going to make better memories if you're not using money as the scapegoat, to where you can say, well, I took them to this nice place. right? No, you're actually gonna have to connect with them to make it a fun trip. And you also brought up another hack. Whenever you start to feel like it's not fair, well, why does that person get to live in a big house and I have to live in the small unit of my house in a good neighborhood, and I only get to live in the 1-bedroom unit, but they get to live in the big house? Well, compare yourself to someone in Cambodia. Compare yourself to somebody in Argentina. Like anywhere else in the world, they look at your small thing like only a rich person would have all of those amenities. Okay, like how many you're living in a nice neighborhood where there's no problem of crime. Someone comes and picks garbage up for you and takes it away. There's running water in a temperature controlled environment. We have better beds we sleep on in America than pretty much everywhere else. Like you don't feel like you're being ripped off when you compare yourself to someone else. You feel like you're being ripped off when you compare yourself to the elite level people that are around you. And I love that you brought that up because that's one way that you can stomach losing comfortability much easier.
Oh, when we lived in that halfplex, man, we had the best barbecues in that little tiny backyard, right? Like just so many memories. It was so small and we like decorated it really nice. And just some of the best times in our life was when like everything was simple, everything was cut out, right? And there's absolutely something to be said about that. Not to mention, you can, as a parent, you can teach your kids some pretty cool lessons, right? You can tell them why you're doing what you're doing, what effect it has on their long-term growth, but also like how they can start making the same kinds of decisions in their life too.
Dude, that's so good. Think about your best memories as a kid. Were they because your dad took you to an expensive steakhouse when you were 9, when you'd probably rather just have a cheeseburger? Or were they like times your dad played with you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was
Did you
like
ever have
the
times when
small... Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, sorry. You froze,
No, I
but
was
I
gonna
see
say
you were
that
talking.
it was like the small spontaneous moments.
Do you remember, did your dad ever play video games with you?
A few times, yes. He was totally into like Tiger Woods golf PGA or whatever on Sega Genesis.
You see how you remember all those
The
details? Because that was
specifics,
like
yeah.
the funnest thing ever that you got your dad to play video games with you,
Mhm.
right? The talks we've had were the best memories when it was like at a fancy place or some big dinner that Keller Williams was hosting and we got to go to. I barely remember those, dude. Wouldn't it have been like a hike that we were on, playing half court 1-on-1 or pick up basketball games at a gym that was totally free, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, like my
So
bachelor party, man. My bachelor party, most people go out, they have a huge bachelor party, they spend a bunch of money, they go get drunk, they go do whatever, right? And they make it this big, extravagant thing. We played basketball. That's all we did. We got a bunch of
and
guys
drink
together and we
Slurpees.
hung out and drank Slurpees.
Basketball and
That's right.
Slurpees. That's
Yes.
right.
And that was a great memory, right? And I don't feel like I missed out on anything.
Yeah, and no one wants to hear that. Gurus can't sell you on taking their program by saying, if you take my program, you can afford Slurpees and play basketball. But so they're gonna put the Ferrari and the Lamborghini and the, like the lifestyle that is very appealing. But
Mhm.
your life becomes worse. You just start throwing money at problems as opposed to throwing emotions and effort and things that matter more. So I think for a lot of people that become financially successful, it's the worst thing ever to happen to their family. You look at a lot of the people that live in like Malibu, Orange County, those kids grow up without a relationship with their parents because their parents just throw money at them and they end up addicted to drugs and really bitter. And like you hardly ever hear about crazy success stories that come out of those 90210 type zip codes.
Yeah, it's like why Shaq isn't leaving any of his money to any of his kids, right? He's basically going to give it all away, and so you got to go figure out how to make your own money, and because he knows if they receive any of that, they're just going to be completely entitled and not motivated. They're going to be completely demotivated.
There you go. Well, this has been great. I
Yeah.
hope you guys enjoyed today's topic. I hope you're thinking about different thoughts than what you were thinking when you came. I hope I create a sense of urgency. I hope you realize you're on an escalator going down and you didn't realize it. And so the goal isn't how do I become affluent and wealthy? The goal is how do I not lose what I've already got and just be in a safe position financially so I'm not stressed. We want to make sure you have food to eat and a place to live and clothes to wear. I don't need to know that you're going to be driving a Lamborghini. I just need to know that you can get around where you need to go. And my fear is we're heading down a path where that may not be the case. Kyle, if people want to attend the retreat we have coming up at Fort Lauderdale, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. So go to davidgreen24.com/retreats. We saw Zach here tonight. So he went ahead and signed up. He's coming, so that's exciting. It's going to be in Fort Lauderdale, July 26th through the 30th. David's going to be there. You're going to get to hang out with him pretty much the entire time, including myself. And I think Christian Bachelder is going to be there as well. Should be
He will.
anyway. And it's going to be like a really, really solid event. They just keep getting better every time we do them. You want to tease a little bit about next week in terms of what we're going to start doing over the next couple weeks, bringing in some of our past attendees?
Yeah, we're going to have people from previous retreats that come in just on each show and tell you what their experience was like and what their relationship with us is like and what you can expect. I know a lot of you are probably 80% of the way there as you're listening to this. Like, I'd like to go, but I'm just not quite sure. Hopefully they help answer that, but they can get you over that extra 20% that you realize this would be really great. The feedback we heard more than anything else was that you guys under promised and over delivered.
Yep.
Like, you should have told me that it was going to be this good. I didn't realize David was going to be the one teaching. I thought other people were going to be coming at this. I didn't realize it was going to be this deep, that we were going to get to know each other this well. I didn't realize it was going to move my emotions and make me think this much. It was people that were basically, this was better than what I was expecting. And so we'd love to see you guys there.
Awesome. Well, go to davidgreen24.com/retreats to sign up. You'll see all the information in there. We're also doing an info session later this week. You can always email me at Kyle Renke at kw.com. I'll drop that here in the comments for everybody. And if you have questions or want to come to that info session, we're going to talk everything about the retreat so you know everything there is to expect that way. Yeah, if you're 80% there, you'll just have some more information. I'm always more than happy to jump on a phone call with anybody that's interested and wants to learn more. So with that, David, do you mind taking us home and telling everybody else to have a great week?
Yeah, thank you guys for being here on a Friday night. Please share the video with other people that may need a little bit of a wake-up call. Sometimes people just don't realize how bad it is because they're getting sold information from people that don't want them to recognize that the situation is probably a little more dire than what we want to believe. So appreciate that. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. All that stuff helps a lot, and we'll see you guys next Friday.
See ya.